VP Racing is all about performance fuels, including SEF small engine fuel. It contains no ethanol, ensuring easier starts, worry-free long-term storage, and fewer repairs. Check out SEF, the perfect fuels for gas-powered tools.
So I'm coming to you from Stage 4 of the Olympus Rally. This is the last round of our championship for 2012 in Rally America. This is a 20-mile long stage. It's the last stage we're going to run in daylight today. We've got to get some cars started and done with the stage by 1 o'clock due to some fire restrictions. So anybody just tuning in to find out about what's going on with Olympus this year, because of the extreme dryness in the area, some of the roads available to be used and some of the scheduling had to all be changed around fire risk restrictions. So we've been up since dark 4:30 this morning. We had cars starting the event at 6:30 or 6:45 this morning. We had a few cars go by on Stage 1. We've got some results from Stage 1 we'll share with you in a minute. Here we are posted up on Stage 4, and like I said, this is the last stage of the morning section. Then we'll have like a 6 or 7 hour break in the middle of the day. Here we got Pat Richard is up.
Wow.
Yeah.
Dude, I just got the camera hit the lake.
Yeah, the first couple cars through are going to be winging rocks our way.
It made it? Mine didn't? Oh.
We're analyzing our GoPro cameras. We've got a couple of GoPros trying to get that worm's eye view of rally cars right in the middle of the corner. So we're taking bets on how long those cameras survive. One of them got taken out just now by Pat Richard. Pat Richard, this morning we saw him, went a little bit wide on a hairpin right going uphill. We've been looking at different driving styles. Because of the loose surface, people are struggling a little bit in the really loose spots. So Pat, he's just got to deal with the loose. He's the first car on the road. His big advantage is he doesn't have to look at any dust. If he can use that advantage, if it stays really dusty, it's really going to pay off for Pat. However, I got to say, I know Pat hasn't been running much of the U.S. Championship so far this year. He did a 7:05 on Stage 1, while Stage winner Ken Block did a 6:32. So Ken put 30 seconds on Pat there. Ken pretty much annihilated the whole field on Stage 1. We'll see him up next. Ken put 8 seconds on David Higgins and 18 seconds on Antoine. And that means David Higgins was 10 seconds up on Antoine on Stage 1. Now, they've run Stages 2 and 3, and we do not have those results to share with you. But those are fairly large gaps for a 4 to 5 mile long stage, which was Stage 1 this morning. So back to the discussion about the loose. As Pat goes by in his typical flamboyant style, he's flinging rocks all over the place and leaving some more cleared tracks. As you get back to car 5 where David Higgins is, he's really banking on not having a penalty of dust and having the advantage of a cleared road. Not all of the stages have as much loose material on top of them, but several do, and David reckons being actually where he and Antoine both are, he reckons that's going to be an advantage to push hard this morning. Judging by the pace we saw Ken come out and set on Stage 1, it's going to be hard to be to stay in that fight if he's able to keep up that kind of push. I know David did not come out asleep this morning on Stage 1 himself, so it's going to be interesting to see if they can continue to hold this pace for the whole event. Now, typically a full rally national event is 100 to 120 stage miles. This one is now reduced to 80 or 82 stage miles, maybe 84 stage miles. It's more of a sprint event. You've got 20 or so less miles you've got to do. Here's Ken Block, it must be. That was Ken Block. Yep. He was just kind of hanging out, really. Ken was. So here's the camera inspection. Looking at the aftermath of Ken Block here as he's just gone through this 90 right onto a long straightaway. Is it still alive?
It's barking.
So yours is good. Sounds like the jury's out on the Rally America GoPro there in the stage. The issue is that it's a 90 right. It's a wide enough to really put the car sideways, and you know it's going to be slippery mid-corner there. So everybody, at least all the top cars, are going to be entering that last section really sideways. And if you look past the guys there that are setting up their GoPros and look at the tracks, if you look at these tracks, you can see how turned the car is before it ever gets to the intersection. There they are. They're where a road racer would still be finishing their braking zone and turning and being prepared to turn. These guys already have the car heavily turned before they get down to an apex, and it's already pointed down the long straightaway that goes out of the left of your screen. Yeah, I don't love where I was standing.
You want to move?
Well, no, it's not a dangerous spot, except for rock spray, and that will get less and less as we go through. All right, let's talk about who's up next. It's Crazy Leo's up next, and then Antoine. So Leo put some time. Leo races with Antoine and Pat Richard in Canada often, and Leo's often a little bit behind the pace of Pat and Antoine, but today Leo's quicker than Pat Richard this morning. In fact, he was 4 or 5 seconds up on him on a 4 or 5 mile long stage. Got to admit, with the helicopter in the background, sometimes it's a little bit hard to hear the car. Usually we get a good warning that a car is on deck, and we don't hear that quite as well right now. So anyway, Crazy Leo's up next. What we saw from Crazy Leo this morning was he was driving very conservative. He had the car making power. He's driving it aggressive enough to get the job done, but he wasn't sliding around too wildly. It looked nice and clean, so I'm not surprised to see a pretty competitive time from him on the timesheet. There we go. We can hear him. Leo's on the way. That's great. So, in my opinion, what we saw there is Leo left his braking zone a little bit late. Before he could let go of the brake pedal, he was in the point where he really had to start adding steering. So if you watched that again, if we had it in slow-mo to show you, what you'd see is the car not moving around quite a bit yet, but still leaning on its front tires, and then the tires turned, and the car then followed. But it's because he was still on the brake so hard that when he turned the tires, they weren't giving him any steering response. And as he let go of the brake pedal, he had the steering in, and the car turned, and off he went. Really just a fine corner, but I'd say if he'd start braking 2 feet earlier, it might have turned out a hair better for him. It's really, the pressure goes up a lot when you get into a bit of loose stuff. You could come charging into this corner, be on the grippy stuff, start braking on the grippy stuff, but as soon as his front tires hit any loose, it requires another driving style. All of a sudden you're playing catch up instead of being ahead of the car as you might have planned. Your camera's still sitting there?
Yeah.
Nice. We could hear that straightaway up there. Leo sounded to me like he was top of whatever gear he was in. I'm not sure it was 6th gear or not, but he was really moving out.
Car 76 has stopped at instruction 26.
Pat Richard has stopped. How far through the stage is instruction 26?
About halfway.
Okay, so what? He is clear, of course?
Off the course. He's clear from the course.
Yeah, okay. So,
Mechanical.
yeah, sounds like Pat Richard's had a mechanical problem already. He's halfway through this stage, and he's pulled off and is out of the off the course for now. Maybe out of the event, maybe he's over there busting knuckles and getting whatever is wrong fixed, and he'll be going again. So we're looking for Antoine Lestage to be up next. He set the 3rd fastest stage time this morning, but was still 18 seconds off of Ken Block's pace. To be, I got to put this in a better frame of reference. Hey, what is that?
Another part of the stage.
Yeah. Okay, got it.
Why are they in there?
Like, why am I hearing that car? So let me put this in perspective when we talk about how many seconds. You got to look at the length of the stage to really get the significance of the gap or the amount of time put on or lost by a competitor. But if you imagine there's 100 miles in a stage and you lost only 1 second a mile, that's 100 seconds difference at the end. Here's Antoine. Antoine looked good on his normal charge, car on the line where he wanted, back to the power where he wanted, all that looked just fine. And I'd say he definitely is. I mean, look at the amount of loose gravel already moved down here where some of our GoPros are set up. But the amount of loose gravel down there already dug out of place and blown out of there is adding to the grip for every next car through here. So that's interesting. It's also could have been an interesting issue if Pat Richard was on course and going slow for a while, and if Ken Block had to catch any of his dust or anything. That's one of the reasons we've got these 3-minute gaps here at the top 5 cars in the field. I'm going to let that sit for a second. David Higgins is up next. David, as I said, was 8 seconds off Ken's pace on stage 1. That's still, like I said, a stage of 4 miles to do 2 seconds a mile of a gain over your competitors is a big gap. Maybe Ken had a bunch of monsters this morning or something. So again, if you're just joining us, it's Olympus Rally. We're on stage 4. We're about 2 miles in to a 20-mile stage. This stage is the last one we'll run this morning. We've got to have all the cars off the stages by 1 o'clock due to some fire restrictions, and we'll fire this event back up this evening at about 6 o'clock. So right now we're going to go to a commercial for a moment. Hang in there. All right, you're with us here, stage 4. We're 2 miles into stage 4 of the Olympus Rally. It's the last stage we'll run of the morning of the event. We've got to have all these cars run through the stage by 1 o'clock due to some fire restrictions. A lot of this event had to be remodeled around the environment and how dry the season's been here this year. We're waiting on David Higgins to show up. This morning on stage 1, David Higgins lost 8 seconds to Ken Block right away this morning, 6:45 in the morning, as we're driving around in the fog and mist. I know that David Higgins already has a championship in the bag. I also know he's got a score to settle with Ken Block from 100 Acre Wood, where he got stuck in the dust and wasn't able to show his full speed because of the dust. So David is going to be on a push here. I'm just curious to what it's going to look like. to dust, but if I don't have to wear it, I'll stand along the outer skirts of it for a minute. There are some smells you experience as a rally person, maybe some more as a competitor, but some just being around the course of rallying. You smell this incredible blend of hot brakes, mud and dirt that's hot on the brakes, burning rubber, race gas. There's all these just fantastic smells associated with the sport here. So David Higgins was pushing, and he looked really good to me. He had the car turned early. He was pinned on the gas all the way out of here. He was not worried about running wide there at all. And if we can get a shot down of the surface, look at the line developing here. Look how much better if you had tires in those tracks. Look how much better you could put the tire down than if you were driving around the loose stuff that's natively laying on the road there. So Pat Richard came through, swept a few rocks away. Ken Block came through, swept some more away. Then Crazy Leo came through, did the same. Then Antoine the same, and then David Higgins got his run. I think his strategy is going to pay off for him. His strategy was to suffer from potentially a little bit of dust, but gain from the more swept road surface. Going into the night, David's plan is to get himself in the front of the field. Whoever goes into those nighttime stages tonight in the lead is going to have a big advantage. So far, the dust hasn't been as bad as expected, at least where we've been watching. But when it gets dark at night, usually the wind tails off and there's not as much wind to clear the dust out, and it's a lot harder to see. Add to that HID lights. When you've got those on, they throw out so much light. It lights up the dust so much, and it's very hard to see the road surface through it. So David's plan, definitely to start the night on top. Lachlan O'Sullivan in Raman Alagaman's car. That looked nice. Lachlan's pushing pretty hard there, it looks to me. He's got to stay in front of David Sterricks, and he's got to finish the event. Actually, his best plan may not be to push exceptionally hard, but he's definitely going for it. So what's cool is Lachlan O'Sullivan's been battling that car for a few events recently, with Ramana driving it on the East Coast, and now he's ended up in the car to finish his super production season. The owner of the Mitsubishi Evolution that Lachlan's been driving is actually here driving the car himself. That's George Plasek. We haven't seen him around any rallies lately, but it's always good to see him show up and run a few events. He does a few events a year. So, tasting crunchy dust taste in the mouth kind of thing. After Lachlan, we should see Adam Yeoman up next. Adam Yeoman's car is one of those that you really know which car it is that's coming. I don't know if it's his tuning guy or the fact that he still uses the 2-liter Subaru engine, but the amount of anti-lag noise that Adam Yeoman's car makes it very distinguishable from the rest. And we should see him up in another half minute, 30 seconds or so. Meant to be doing split times, and I failed at that. I actually saw when Pat Richard came through, I got a time and then forgot to look at my watch again. So I don't have a lot of information about the first 2 miles of this 20-mile stage. After Adam comes through, we'll see Will Orders and see how well he's doing. When we get to service, we got to go look at Will Orders' rear tires and see the story that they are telling. The story of trauma they've experienced so far this morning. The other interesting thing about the tire wear, on a 20-mile stage, the tires never get a chance to cool off. So they get up to temperature, start really cooking themselves, and then just melt away. Yep, that's Adam. Let's see how Adam did this morning on stage number 1. I'm blind right now. There he is. He did an 8:04. So compared to the others, yeah. Adam looked a little conservative this morning. He's made a lot of changes to his car. I'm not sure how those changes are working out for him right now. He made changes to the weight of the car and the amount of power it's making and all that kind of stuff. But sometimes when you go too heavily modifying a car, it really impacts the drivability. And he could be experiencing something today he didn't plan on about the car being a little harder to drive and deal with. So Adam looks to be a little bit conservative right now, but he's zooming along just fine. So next should be Will Orders. So let's tell you a little bit of the two-wheel drive story. Will put some time on ACP. So ACP Chris Duplessis is leading the two-wheel drive championship. ACP is the only two-wheel drive car that could take the championship away from Chris this weekend. But Will Orders is the one that's won 2 of his last 3 rallies here in the U.S. in his Nissan Silvia. The car has like 350 horsepower. It's rear-wheel drive. It's a ton of fun to watch. And by the way, he says he can turn the power up more. The way the turbo and motor are put together, he's got 600 horsepower there if he wants it. The trouble is you just could never use that much power. I think he's using a tune of around probably 325, 350 horsepower here this weekend. So he's put some time on ACP, 8 or so seconds on the first stage, and then they together both were another 10 seconds up on Chris Duplessis from stage 1. So there's one of those things about a rear-wheel drive rally car, and that is when it's loose, sometimes it's hard to get the front tires to do the work they need to do to get the car to point. And what it looked to me like there was either his note didn't feel really good to him for how much distance he had from the end of that corner to this corner, or something about the little crest. Maybe he had crest into the corner or whatever, but in my opinion, his note didn't suit him super well there. And I saw him kind of working around trying to manage to get the front of the car to turn when he wanted it to. So I'm not sure if it was his note more or if it was just a little bit of a loose nature up there for getting the car to turn. But what I was going to say, in a rear-wheel drive car, so you don't have quite as much management of the car there at the limit. In a front-wheel drive, you can just yank on the handbrake, stand on the gas, and you've got the ability to kind of control the nose of the car in a very big slide. In the rear-wheel drive car, sometimes you're braking and trying to get the car to turn in at the same time. You've got no way to keep those front tires rolling. In a front-wheel drive car, you can do some left-foot braking as you're trying to manage it. And if you get the front tires to lock up, well, no big deal. You can just squeeze the gas more and let go of the brake some and get the tires rolling again. You can really, really manage your grip in the front of the car. In a rear-wheel drive car, it's harder to manage the grip with the front tires, especially in a loose surface trying to get the car to turn in. Okay, it's going to be... That sounds like Chris already.
70.
It is. I was right. Did they do a reseed?
No. Maybe at the line.
I was looking at the wrong sheet. That was awesome. It was all the awesomeness and less of the dust. That was great, Chris. Chris cut the corner more than anybody else did so far. And that's got to be the name of the game in a low horsepower car that's light and nimble like that. Chris is giving it everything he's got there. He looked a lot faster on the approach in the corner and going away from us than Will did. Now, where Chris will start to suffer is after we're out of view when it gets to the really fast section. Chris's top speed's just 105 or so. Something like that, maybe 109, maybe 105, while Will's top speed's 130 miles an hour or so. Not sure if he'll quite see that here or not, but it'll be an interesting conversation to ask about later. So David Sterrick should be up next. Earlier, Max Riddle was out of order. He was 4 or 5 cars back from where we expected him to be. Actually, he was after David Sterrick. So we should be seeing David Sterrick's next in a Subaru, running the Super Production battle. Again, he's the only one that could potentially win the Super Production Championship and take it away from Lachlan if Lachlan doesn't finish. And it's still a fairly long shot. I think Lachlan has to not finish and then David win or be top 3 in Super Production, which could certainly happen. He won the event in Oregon. Okay. And that sounds like a Subaru. Okay, I think we'll be seeing David Sterrick here momentarily. Does does sound like a Subaru, but this is not the one I expected. It's Max Riddle. So at this point, it just looks like Max Riddle and Krista Plussy have swapped their running order. No big deal. I think we'll be seeing David Stericks up next. And Evan Klein, we've heard, is on the stage. So I believe we'll see David Stericks next, and then Rick Song, and then Evan Klein come by and dust us a bit. It seems to be getting more dusty, is it? Yeah.
Probably pulling the dustier shit up from.
That makes sense, yeah. The rocks are blown away. Now the tires are digging in a little bit deeper on the surface, and they're getting down to some more dry dirt underneath.
Did you hear that?
No.
Car 17 has a flat. Car 20 about a third into the course.
Oh, Antoine.
Are they changing it?
They're only a third of the way into this stage?
Yeah, they're at instruction 36.
Okay, this is great being by a radio control. So we've just heard Antoine Lestage has had a flat. He's on the stage and changing it. That has got to be a heartbreaking thing to have to deal with on a 20-mile stage. You're a third of the way in. It's not going to be smart to try to drive the car out on a flat, and you've just got to suck it up and pull over and change it. That is hard to do. It takes about 3 minutes for a well-practiced driver and co-driver to get out and change a tire, provided they've got a good place to jack the car up. You might end up stopping on something soft or having to stop on a hilly area or whatever. There's tons of things that can go wrong when you need to change a flat. There's also tons of interesting things you can do when you need to change a flat. I've tried this before where I parked the car really aggressively in a ditch so that the tire I needed to change was off the ground, and that helps speed things up a little bit. Now we'll see David Stericks coming by. Super production. Nope, I was wrong. Evan Klein. Pardon me, I'm going to go check in with our list. Are you keeping a list of which cars start?
Yeah,
Has Stericks started, number 14?
Requesting confirmation that their service team was notified. KF7HT.
what car number?
Just went by.
Went by?
77?
Yeah, I thought he was done.
No, the car that just went by is 669. That was Evan Klein.
Oh, yeah,
77 just started on
Yeah,
course.
he just got on course.
Yeah.
I'm sorry.
So as you can see, different corner marshals along the course will keep up with which car has gone by them. So if we're missing a car at the end of the stage, we'll already know that it didn't pass a certain point and it's out of the order, and we can send someone to go find them. It is possible to crash your car off a cliff or out into the woods in a way that no one sees you or even your marks on the road when you go by.
Yeah, I'm going
I've
to
just touched some buttons on the bottom of my mic.
I want to make sure I get like fast repair it.
Okay, we should be good again.
Instruction 32.
What else can I share with you? So we're not waiting on David Stericks. He has not started the stage yet. So that's really interesting that might have already mostly decided the super production battle. If David doesn't win or nearly win and Lachlan not finish, then David wouldn't have a chance to take the championship away from Lachlan. If David's out of this event already, Lachlan might not have to finish the event after all and still take the championship in super production for 2012. This is VO. Black Subaru should be. Yep. ACP is up next.
Get the donuts out.
So they've just started. The angry hamster is upon us here shortly. ACP and Jeremy Wimpy will be on a charge. What we saw was Will having a little bit of a tentative moment here in two-wheel drive. His closest chaser is ACP, or was on stage one, and he's up next. So we'll see how ACP is running after a couple stages in the middle. That came out really smoothly, right? So I'm eager to see the stages 2 and 3. Some drivers don't come out on a charge right away. Some drivers take like half a stage to get their senses awoken and get ready to go. A lot of the upper ends of competition where you're really going for those wins against other, really stiff competition, all those drivers have to come out of the box fighting. But others have different tactics. What we could see here is that Chris and ACP are able to keep the pressure on Will. While he came out of the box really hot this morning, he might have been slowing down a bit now. It'll be interesting. So we're managing another bit of GoPro positioning here to get some worm's eye view. I'm not sure about ACP's gearbox this year. I'm not sure what the top speed is. At one point he was limited also to 105 or something like that, and that really hurt him out at the Oregon Rally this year at the foothills of Mount Hood. Okay, we should be seeing ACP momentarily. Scion XD. So we can see Andrew definitely experimenting with his own versions of traction control. So as the boost comes on in that car, it comes on really aggressively. The tires go from having some grip with the surface to just spinning like crazy and annihilating themselves. So what I heard there was ACP upshifted twice. I would say probably prematurely before the car made all the power it was going to make. But that was his form of probably trying to modulate the power a bit and not get as much wheel spin there in the loose.
That's what he was working on with David Higgins at the Dirtfish, was upshifting.
Oh, right. And we had a little bit of an inside view of David Higgins giving some advice and some input to some other drivers. I know David rode with Mason Moyle some. I know he also rode with ACP and drove the Scion XD a little bit. And it sounds like that's one of the things they were working on, was trying to shift sooner and get more power to the ground and not waste it through spinning tires. How are we staying through like 25 cars or so? Okay, cool. So I expect that we did not see George Plisette come through. Let me check on that. Car 30 start?
It just started.
Okay, cool. So we're going to see the car Lachlan's been driving all year in Super Production, the one he's used to get himself in the lead of Super Production, driven by its actual owner, George Plisette. He's on his way. He's about a mile out or so from us right now. Here he is. Nice and clean. That looked really clean. Let's look at the entrance to this corner. See the bank and the loose stuff? Right as some of those wide lines stay left longer. That only developed in the last 4 or 5 cars. The top cars were further away from that outside bank. And as you get further down the order and some cars have a little less power and they're not as good at coming off the corner, people try to widen the corner more and more. And I got caught out a couple times doing that kind of thing. Actually, I almost rolled a car over at STPR, getting stuck kind of up in a ditch on the left side of the road, trying to just maximize the line there. But George had his car turned nice and early, on the power, nice and clean exit. Car looks like it's running well as well. The other interesting thing about George's Mitsubishi is that a wheel went missing off of it on the test stage the other night, and it took him 20 minutes or so digging around in the dark woods to find his wheel and tire. They just had left parted company with the rest of the car. Luckily, that went ahead and happened in testing, and he's holding together just fine out here on the stage.
425 past 45.
Okay, we're going to stay for probably another 8 or 10 cars. Will Hudson should be up next. We saw Will Hudson earlier today. I think he's the one that I pointed out I thought was using a 5-speed gearbox. Was doing good to have as much patience as he was as the car built some boost to pull second gear up the hill. And I haven't met or spoken to Will Hudson.
Here, check it.
Car 70 passed instruction 32 and a SRE.
For the win.
Car up.
Car 90 has finished.
It is Will Hudson. And he's showing us that he's not scared to be aggressive. He was pitching the car all over the place there to make sure it got turned. That's another technique you'll see from cars that use a manual center diff. The super production cars, most of them, if I think all of them, have an active center differential. So you can program that car with maps and such to let the diff allow the front and the rear tires to rotate at different speeds. With a limited slip diff in the middle of the car, it'll often still be resisting the times that you most need the front tires and the rear tires to roll at different speeds, and that's at turn in of a car, or turn in for a corner. So it kind of resists the car turning into the corner a little bit more. He might be using a manual diff like that, and that would explain his style on the corner approach here. He's definitely on the attack. He's tapped something or other and has half his bumper dragging down the stage, so it'll be interesting to see if that's still there when he gets to service. Okay, after Will, Chris and Lori O'Driscoll should be up in their black Super Production Subaru. And then Mason Moyle. So Mason sounds like, interviewing Mason, talking with him earlier, it sounds like he picked up quite a few good tips from David Higgins before the event. They were able to spend some time together. David was able to drive Mason's car a little bit. They could point out a few things about the handling and maybe suspension setup that weren't ideal, and then give Mason some tips for how he could be conducting himself a little bit differently in the driver's seat. And for anybody that doesn't know, David Higgins, this year's champion, he's his fourth time being a U.S. rally champion. He has a rally school in Wales in which he conducts classes for rallyist of all levels, new and experienced.
Car 377 has started.
Yep, it's Chris and Lori O'Driscoll. Oh, that's all she wrote. That's a bit of a mess. Okay, we'll pick up some pieces of one of our strategically placed cameras. See what's left of it.
Oh, that one's gone.
I think it is in multiple pieces. That's a bummer. I don't know sometimes if those shots are that valuable. We'll see.
I saw some plastic.
In the, like,
Yeah, I saw a cover winging its way over here playing frisbee suddenly.
I think that's coming under warranty.
no, we passed car 5. Thank you.
Oh, no, we're like,
We are on car number 19. Mason Moyle's on his way through, I expect. There's the bits.
See it right there. Nice.
How many pieces is that supposed to be?
One.
That's supposed to be one piece?
well, I mean, there's batteries and cards and all kinds of stuff.
But at most it could normally be 3 pieces.
Yeah.
And now we have more than that. More pieces than that now. I see right there. More than normal pieces there. That's the value model. Definitely a lot of value there. Okay, so Mason Moyle's on his way up. We were talking about Mason and how he just spent some time with David Higgins in his car. I'd be interested to see, I don't believe I had a time for him on stage 1. No, I didn't. So I haven't gotten any feedback for how that's working out for him. Here he is, though. One of the things I really maybe sometimes overdo because I have so much fun doing it is left foot braking, also blipping the throttle when I downshift, and just like having the whole cacophony of things happening around the pedal box. In the super production cars without a dog box, you find those situations, if you're a left foot braker, that you need to suddenly, you've started, you come into the corner doing some braking maybe with your left foot, then you've got to kind of hop your feet over and then brake some, and then blip the throttle between downshifts. And that's a skill that a lot of us learned, some autocrossing and then driving on racetracks and such before coming into the rally community. Some people that started just rallying right away didn't get that kind of experience blipping the throttle between downshifts and stuff. And sometimes I hear Mason, I think, trying that, and other times I don't think he does. I think he just downshifts and lets the clutch back out. There's not really any reason that's terribly wrong in rally or anything. It's a different impact than you'd have on the paved courses. But we could see him come in here driving really cleanly. We'll see the timesheets and see if it's paying off for him. After Mason, Dylan should be up. We asked Ananda to go check in with Dylan's team, and what they heard was that he was still working out some aspect or other of the way the car was performing this morning. He should be fully up to speed here when we see him. It's stage 4. Stage 1, we only made it through about 15 cars before we had to jet to get here on time. So, stage 4 of Olympus Rally. It's the last one of the morning. We're gonna have a 6-hour break before our evening stages come up. That's Dylan. Dylan's definitely moving out right now. That looked plenty clean. He was getting the job done, and he's on his way out of here. Like I said, I'm excited to get back to service as well and see what some of these timesheets are going to tell us about how these guys are doing. What do you say, 2 or 3 more cars? We're probably going to be out of battery or out of card or something. Up next, Byron Garth, Chrissy Beavis. Probably know the name Chrissy Beavis. She usually is in the car with Raman Alagaman. He's not here this weekend, even though his car is. And Chrissy's riding with Byron Garth. You've seen some of Byron's work this year, helping edit and put pieces together for the Rally America coverage. A lot of the interviews that don't have me in them, that are just kind of up in the face of some of the drivers, are shot by Byron. So he's a multi-talented guy. Hopefully we'll see him come cruising by here in his Subaru in a minute, having a lot of fun. I asked him how many tires he brought here, and he said he seemed to think it was enough, but he didn't really tell me how many, because I'm not sure he knew how many he had. And I asked him what condition they were in. He said they're pretty good. And when I looked at him, I thought that's what I used to call pretty good when I was just getting started in rally, and they were not pretty good given these conditions. So it'll be interesting to hear from him as well when we get to service. I'll check in and see if he started actually. Who's just started?
401.
Yep, that's them. Cool. So Byron and Chrissy will be up in just a moment. Here they are. Awesome. That's great. So before I knew Byron, I had seen him drive by a few times, and I thought, that guy's on it. Like, he's going for it. And here, look, the same thing. He had his car turned as early as anybody else did, pointing into the corner. Fully turned, and you saw how it did kind of a hop mid-corner. Well, one thing could be that he's not on terribly awesome suspension, but he had the car turned so early that when he hit this bit of a gully coming from one road to the next, the car was already pointed and on the gas. The only downside to pointing the car that early is if you end up a little tighter in on the apex than planned and there's a big rock there or something, then the story can change pretty quickly, but that looked great to me. Looks like they're having some fun. Oh, I see the hop. Nice. Good deal.
Little mess.
Yeah, sure. Or cool. I don't know our time.
8-hour service after this.
It's an 8-hour service coming up.
What number is Barrett?
Barrett dash is 48th on my list, and currently we're at car 22. So you got over double the amount of cars to come through before Barrett gets here. Yep. Okay. And we're back. We had a brief media card malfunction as the car was coming through. We're on stage 4 at the Olympus Rally. This is a 20-mile long stage, and it's the last stage run during daylight today. We've been running rally stages since 6:45 this morning, and we haven't seen much attrition, but we have seen some of the class battles start to stretch themselves out and show some differences. I can't tell you exactly what those are now because we're headed to service to find that out. We're going to get to the service area, bring you some interviews with the drivers, and show you how some of the teams are occupying the 8 hours they have before more stages of the night. My name is Matthew Johnson. Again, it's Olympus Rally 2012. Thanks for joining us.